into this discussion now. Political campaigning is not a cheap exercise for political parties who have to crisscross the country as they attempt to sway voters. You'll remember that the Finance Minister Enoch Godongwana last month revealed that 200 million rand would be allocated toward political party funding. This is ahead of the May poll. For more on this now, and importantly how these funds are disbursed, we are joined by the IEC Party Funding CEO, Mahlangu. Alongside him is Robyn, Pasensie. She is from the organization My Vote Counts. To both of you, thank you very much for your time. Can I start with you, Mr. Mahlangu? Strong views coming through suggesting that this is good money thrown after bad. Do you agree?
Look, I'm going to reserve my comments, sorry, but and good evening to your viewers at home. Sorry, I'm going to reserve my comments, but I think what I want to comment about is that political parties have to be funded to strengthen democracy in the country. Now, weaker political parties translates to weaker democracy. So the platform has to be solid so that both business, citizens, and all who live in this country can benefit from a stronger democracy. So we are glad to see that there is donations that are coming forth that come from both individuals and business to support democracy in the country.
Let's come to you, Ms. Pasensie. Do you agree that more money for political parties is helping strengthen South Africa's democracy? If so, how?
Well, first of all, good evening and thank you for having me on the show. And like Mr. Mahlangu, I will reserve some of my comments because it is a rather complicated matter. I do agree with the sentiments that in a multi-party democracy such as we have in South Africa, what you want to have is a robust participation, a wide range of representation so that everyone in the country can actually feel that whatever their wants, needs are adequately represented by whatever political representation we have on offer.
Yeah.
Your question was, well, is more money going to be useful? And I think we should put this in view of we have a particular status quo of only a few sort of well-known, large and established political parties. And the issue for smaller and emerging parties is how are they able to do the thing we are talking about in the absence of money? So we do need money. And to answer the second part of your question, it's precisely so that they can be in the public consciousness, capture the public audience so that we can see what is it that you are about and do you in fact represent me? And obviously for the political party or the independent, as this will soon be in May, the question is for you as the voter, do I now want to put my vote there? And I think that's really the conversation about, is increased money going to help that situation?
Yeah. This money, Mr. Mahlangu, the understanding is that it is distributed proportionally. Simply put, it's distributed based on the number of members that political parties have in parliament, and so immediately you understand that the ANC, followed by the DA, will probably get the lion's share of this money. Is that assumption correct?
You're correct, Olive. The money that comes from the public purse funds all the political parties that are represented either at National Assembly or provincial legislatures. So, and there's a formula to that effect, which is on equitable basis and proportional basis. Now, 33% of that allocation is on equitable basis. What does that mean? It means that whether you've got 1 or 2 seats or 7 seats in a provincial legislature or a national assembly, you get the same amount. And then the 67%, which is the difference, is allocated on a proportional basis, meaning that the more the number of seats you have as a political party, the more money that you will get from that allocation.
Yeah.
So your analysis is correct.
Robyn, let's then come to you. Cynics are going to say, but this is the ANC giving itself more money in an election period through, of course, government channels, and this does not bode well, particularly for political parties who are much smaller. Is that analysis correct, and are cynics correct in making that assumption that this is the ANC effectively giving itself more money, particularly at a time when they've been complaining about dwindling donations since the introduction of the Political Party Funding Act, which requires political parties to disclose how much money they get from whom?
Well, I mean, again, a complicated question. I mean, you're absolutely right. What we have is that we have the ANC, who is our governing party, and because of that, they have the largest share of seats in the national parliament. And as Mr. Mahlangu said, if you're going to receive any public funds that are allocated under the Political Party Funding Act, because of that, they are going to get the lion's share of that money. And any political party who's in the position of being the governing party is also going to be in that position of receiving the lion's share. So I think that cynicism is warranted. And it goes to what I said earlier about what we don't want to have is money being used in such a way to maintain a particular status quo. What I will say is that the allocation that Mr. Mahlangu spoke about was actually revised. Previously, the allocation was at 90-10, so 90% of the money was actually being given on an equitable basis, equitable for 10% and 90% for a proportional share of your seats. So the larger parties would have received even more money under that allocation. So presently, it is a bit more equitable that is going out to political parties. But I think the cynicism is warranted, particularly in an election year. We are concerned about how money is being shifted through the public purse. But my final sort of comment here would also be to say it's not as though political parties only rely on public money. They obviously also have a private source of income through private donations, and together this is something that we should be looking at in terms of influence, which is what My Vote Counts is particularly concerned about.
Yeah. George Mahlangu, perhaps you get to have the final word. Recently, we saw donations, and there have been much headlines, particularly for parties like Rise Mzansi that are not even in parliament yet, and they are receiving huge sums of money. How is that handled by the IEC? Because the understanding is that those that must disclose what monies they've got from whom, those are parties that are already represented in Parliament. How does this work when a party is yet to even go to the ballot paper?
Political Party Funding Act applies to all the political parties that are registered with the IEC. So once you register with the Commission, then you are expected to comply with this law, mainly for the fact that they are prohibited donations. So you may not have a seat in either of these legislative houses, but you may receive money from a foreign source which is prohibited by the Act. So registered political parties are welcome to receive private donations. And once, of course, after the elections, if they get a seat, then they will participate in the public funding. So Rise Mzansi as a political party that has recently registered, for the fact that it is registered with the Commission, it has to comply with the provisions of this Act.
All right. George Mahlangu, CEO of Party Funding within the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa, or IEC for short, and then Robyn Pasensie. Let me thank you very much for your time. She is a funding researcher within the organization My Vote.